Mary Jean, or MJ Sal, was born in 1946 to a family of teachers. Growing up in Midwest City, Oklahoma, a town near Oklahoma City, MJ was instilled with a sense of purpose and strong work ethic from a young age. As a young girl, MJ emulated her family's deep passion for reading, and as a result would often beg family members to read to her. When she could finally read herself, she would devour every book or newspaper she could get her hands on. When she finally began attending school, MJ's previous encounters with reading had already formed such a strong foundation that she would often read far ahead her own grade level. As her mother would typically work multiple jobs to support her in the summertime, MJ would spend her summers in Holdenville, Oklahoma with her aunt, uncle, and cousins. Holdenville was another place of early literacy sponsorship for MJ. If she was not reading with her cousins, she was watching her aunt design and make fashionable clothing for her family. This was one of her first encounters with artistic literacy, something that later became very important to MJ. MJ was first introduced to her future career as a journalist when she took her first journalism course her senior year of high school. She enrolled as a member of the yearbook class and was in charge of the layout design and some of the writing. As a teenager in the 1960s, MJ was exposed to some of the most tumultuous times in American history. The intensity of the political climate escalated when MJ attended the Oklahoma College for Women in Chickasha for her freshman summer and school year. There was a discussion of making the college coeducational, something that completely divided the campus. Rather than spend her 2 years at OCW, MJ made the decision to transfer to the University of Oklahoma in Norman because she feared that OCW would lose its accreditation. MJ attended the University of Oklahoma for her sophomore year, where she made the decision to major in clinical psychology and minor in journalism. After having trouble with an algebra course, MJ decided to change her major to journalism, a plan that infuriated her mother and stepfather. They believed that the only way a woman could make a living as a professional was to become a teacher, something that was true of their generation. But MJ pushed back. It was the 60s, MJ said. Times were changing, and she could do whatever she wanted to do. At the end of her sophomore year, MJ's roommate got a job in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and invited her to come along. As her home life had unraveled due to her choice to become a journalist, MJ saw it as a perfect opportunity to explore her passion for journalism. She moved to New Mexico and started a job at the Alamogordo Daily News. She was a reporter, photographer, and worked in the darkroom developing the newspaper's film. MJ also attended the Alamogordo branch of New Mexico State University, where she took her core classes. During her 3 years there, MJ devoted much of her time to working on the newspaper. She interviewed a Nobel Prize winner in physics, and she also interviewed Clint Eastwood and Bruce Dern while they were on the set of Hang 'em High. As a small-town reporter, MJ took on a role as a gatekeeper. It was up to her to accurately cover what was happening in her town. After leaving New Mexico, MJ returned to OU and attended classes at night for over 3 years. During the span of taking classes in Norman, MJ worked at a newspaper in Chickasha and also at a 24-hour restaurant as a cook. Although she had already picked up skills of interviewing, reporting, and writing, she credits her time with working with Mrs. Moore, the advisor of OU's daily newspaper, with providing her with positive reinforcement. MJ remembers not having a great deal of self-confidence, but Mrs. Moore's instruction allowed her to trust her instincts and become a great journalist. She also attended several campuses across the state of Oklahoma and took classes on subjects she was interested in, such as religion or music. Although she was only one credit away from graduating with a bachelor's degree, it never slowed her down. Eventually, MJ visited Eureka Springs and then later moved to the area and worked as a journalist for several newspapers. After years of time-consuming work, MJ became Eureka Springs city clerk for 8 years. She retired in 2010, but she couldn't sit still for long. With the help of one of her friends, MJ began writing a book about the history of Eureka Springs from the 1970s to the present. She took the computer skills she learned as a city clerk and began her research. She's still currently working on it. She also creates stained glass panels and has taken up a form of wood carving. In learning about MJ's life, I was struck by the way her various occupations and hobbies were dependent upon the particular area that she was in. Although she worked in similar roles as a journalist, the content of what she reported on was specific for each individual town. What was important to report on in New Mexico would not necessarily be important for what was happening in Pryor, Oklahoma. Overall, MJ's story displayed the eclectic nature of the area. People from different parts of the country come to the Ozarks for a multitude of reasons, making it a far cry from the perception that Arkansas is home to a homogeneous group of people. As educators, it is important to look at a story like MJ's and realize that our literacies develop out of the places we live. Specific literacy practices are influenced by the values of each community. As Eureka Springs highly values art, so would it be that many residents practice or hold art in a high esteem. What is valued in Fayetteville may not necessarily be valued in Harrison, and because of this, we must tailor lessons to what a community values, rather than even try to standardize an entire state. Educators must also reevaluate how literacy learning takes place in school. MJ developed skills from her instructors because they encouraged her to actually put them into practice. She didn't just learn how to write newspaper articles, she actually went out and did them. We must provide students with the opportunity to develop real-world skills within the classroom. For instance, if a student is interested in becoming a journalist like MJ, a school could allow students to create their own online articles or make a podcast, two things utilized by millions of Americans. Another thing to consider is that although students may have the same practices like writing, we also must teach them that the content of what they write about will change depending on the space in which they are writing. Writing on a social media platform like Facebook is certainly different than writing an article, and this is important to communicate to students. I believe that if we give students the opportunities to put their favorite literacies into practice, more students may feel as though they are appreciated and respected, and this opens up for more classroom engagement. Offering positive reinforcement for students' work, like MJ experienced, gives students a greater sense of self-worth. Most of all, teachers must find what their students value and create lessons based upon that. Every community is different, and taking the time to listen to what a community needs is the first step to greater, more enriched learning.